We hear these days a lot about so-called fake news. I hope there is not one person in the public who doesn't believe that fake news is in fact a real phenomenon. Ever since the Iraq War and the phony stories about weapons of mass destruction and atomic bombs only 45 minutes from London in the hands of the diabolical Saddam Hussein, which was used to justify a war that has claimed hundreds of thousands of lives of foreign individuals and maimed or killed tens of thousands of American and British soldiers, as well as others. It turned out that this was false propaganda, admitted to even by some individuals who were involved in propagating it, such as Colin Powell in the United States. So fake news is a real phenomenon, and we find that different political factions actually believe in it most seriously because they are constantly accusing their opponents in the political field of disseminating it. Any mind that is active will wonder about the very phenomenon of the news. Every day we are told by national and local television networks and stations at a certain time that we are to be given the news. Well, it's quite a claim that this is the news rather than just news, because it's obvious that millions of events, many of them of importance for the whole world, are ongoing all the time. And yet, the news consists of a practically infinitesimal selection of these items, which are presented to you as all you need to know to understand what has happened during that day that is important. I rarely watch television news, but when I do, I'm sitting there saying, why is this news that is selected over other matters that is presented to me as something I should be paying significant attention to? In Canada, we pay an inordinate amount of attention to news emanating from the United States. News about shootings or riots. And one has to question why this is regarded as being something to which our attention must constantly be drawn. It is rather as if we had to be given our daily dose of tragic input. And I really must regard it as some kind of what is popularly known as a psyop in order to condition our thinking in certain ways. Anyway, fake news is obviously a real phenomenon, and the news agencies that disseminate it sometimes apologize for it and sometimes promise that they will not make the mistake again. But the same mistake constantly recurs when it is required to initiate some overriding national policy, such as going to war. Fake news has its counterpart in other areas of human informing, most notably in the educational system. You can readily illustrate this by drawing attention to what students of economics are taught in courses at university. For example, they are provided with a concept of inflation that very largely ignores what is going on in the real world. Inflation, we are told, is the amount whereby prices rise in a given period. It is held to be a bad thing. The implication being, apparently, that if prices were stable, this would be the answer to this creeping evil that is constantly filching away people's incomes and economic security. But in fact, the idealization of stable prices is very unrealistic. Prices are inherently dynamic. They change all the time because the factors determining them are subject to alteration. When some very clever engineer comes up with a new means of delivering production that involves less human input, less energy consumption, or fewer material inputs, the normal result one would expect from this development would be a cheaper product, a product with a lower financial cost. Now, this process of increasing potential productive efficiency is going on all the time. Therefore, taking it into account, the tendency should be for prices to be going down. So a realistic reflection of what is going on in the economy would be a continuous tendency for prices to be declining. And yet what we see is a continuous tendency for prices to be rising. And this, we are told, is inflation. But if prices were not rising, if they were stable, and efficiency gains were occurring all the time, it would soon become evident to people that a very strange lack of reflection of improved and more efficient productive methods in the price system was occurring. Right now, this definition of inflation as the amount by which prices are rising over a given period provides a kind of mask for this other component of inflation, which in all probability, although it is not studied in detail for public consumption, is greater than the so-called 2 or 3% of annual increases in prices. Thus, we see that inflation is actually considerably more than we are told it is, because it consists not only of the amount by which prices have risen, but also of the amount by which, in the nature of things, prices should have declined if gains in productive efficiency were being taken into account in establishing prices. So why is this patently defective definition of inflation maintained? Well, for one, it keeps the natives from getting too restless about not getting the full benefits of all the fantastic technological progress being made in the world. But for another, it provides the financial interests with a cover for the exercise of their power of controlling the economy through the opening and closing of the financial tap that allows the economy to function. The control of this tap is a fantastic power over the economy of the world and all people affected thereby. In effect, it is a power to control the resources of the world. A great prize, and not one that those holding it currently would like to lose. So when you think of the definition of inflation and how flawed it is, you should realize that The people who want to control the world are not interested in truth or in fair play. They are interested primarily in maintaining their predominant positions in the world. This is why dust is thrown in the faces of the population, and they are given such evidently misleading information through the media and through the educational system. Control of the media and the educational system emanates from money considerations. The financial system is nothing less than a great licensing bureau for human activity. And both the media and the educational institutions are subject to its purview. So there is a counterpart to the phenomenon of fake news in the media, in what is being taught to essentially intellectually unprepared students who are being channeled through the educational system. And the patently misleading definition of inflation disseminated through both these avenues is an excellent illustration of how our thinking is being controlled and misdirected.